Protostomates, mollusks, segmented worms, and arthropods. After completing the laboratory session, you should be able to describe the distinguishing characteristics of the groups and organisms studied, identify representatives of the animal groups studied, identify and state the function of the structural components of the animals studied, and define all the terms in bold print. Recall from the Simple Animals lab that we are currently learning about animals. The kingdom Animalia has many similarities, but also many differences. In the Simple Animals lab, we considered animals that precede coelomates in evolutionary development, hence the name Simple Animals. These included acoelomates and pseudocoelomates. Recall that the term coelom refers to the body cavity. Acoelomates like flatworms have no body cavity, while pseudocoelomates like roundworms have an incomplete body cavity. Sponges have no germ layers and therefore no body organization, while cnidarians have tissue-level organization that results in a sac-like body plan. Coeloms have a complete body cavity arising from the mesoderm. Among the coelomates, two groups arise. Protostome means first mouth, and the blastopore gives rise to the mouth. In Deuterostomes, the blastopore gives rise to the anus. In Protostomes, a second opening results in the anus, and the reverse occurs in Deuterostomes. The coelom gives rise to the digestive tract, which essentially protects the internal organization of an animal from the food it ingests. All chemicals must be absorbed into the body in order to be utilized. Those that are not needed are expelled without ever truly entering the animal body. In other words, the food remains outside of the body at all times. The molluscan body plan is characterized by a ventral muscular foot, a dorsal visceral mass, a mantle that surrounds the visceral mass and often secretes a shell, and a radula, a file-like mouth part used to scrape off bits of food. The mollusks are part of the clade Lophotrochozoa. Lopho refers to a ring of ciliated tentacles surrounding the mouth in aquatic organisms. Trochophores have free-swimming larvae with several bands of cilia. Bivalvia have laterally flattened bodies. The dorsal surface holds the two body halves together, and an adductor muscle keeps the structure closed. A ventral muscular digging foot buries the clams. The clams are also filter feeders. The incurrent siphon brings water into the mantle cavity. It exits via the excurrent siphon. This movement of water exchanges gases and provides food sources. Clams have an open circulatory system, which evolved in crustaceans, insects, mollusks, and other invertebrates. Blood is pumped into the hemocoel, with the blood diffusing back to the circulatory system between cells. The blood is pumped by a heart into the body cavities where tissues are surrounded by blood. The blood resides in the gills, which absorb gases from the incurrent water. Cilia on the gills move trapped food particles from the labial palps into the mouth. Food is processed by the digestive organs and nutrients are absorbed into the blood, and waste products are expelled via the anus and kidney. This is characteristic of the open circulatory system. In contrast, a closed circulatory system has blood that is always inside of vessels, not bathing the organs. Another kind of mollusk is a cephalopod. Instead of having a digging foot, cephalopods use a modified foot called tentacles as arms. They're predaceous, and they use these tentacles, which have suction cups, to capture their prey. A horny beak also facilitates feeding. Like clams, the siphon facilitates water movement into the mantle cavity. Unlike clams, the expulsion of this water facilitates movement. Octopi or cephalopods can swim backwards primarily, but they can also swim forwards. Octopi have no shell, but squids have a pen, which is a transparent protective plate. Both octopi and squid have open circulatory systems. They release an ink which deters predation. And they have an eye-like structure that allows for vision, but it's developed in a very different way than an eye with which you might be familiar. Now let's talk about the segmented worms. So worms have somites, which are repeating units in their segmented body. Most famously, earthworms can be cut in half and they still survive because they have all the necessary organs in their body chunks. Most of the somites are basically similar. They include the internal arrangement of muscles, nerves, blood vessels, and excretory ducts. Most annelids are marine, but many occur in freshwater, and the ones you're familiar with also occur in terrestrial habitats. Annelids are trochophores. They have free-swimming larvae with several bands of cilia. We already learned about that. While earthworms don't seem to have much in common with mollusks, their larvae are very similar, hence this evolutionary relationship. So earthworms exhibit the basic characteristics of segmented worms. They have a closed circulatory system, a complex digestive and nervous system, and sexual organs. Their mouth is covered by a small projection called the prostomium. And that band around the body of the worm is called a clitellum, and that's part of the sexual organs. It forms a ring of mucus around the copulating worms and later becomes a holder for the fertilized eggs. The seminal vesicles contain sperm, and during copulation, both earthworms release sperm via the vasa deferens. After the worms separate, the sperm is released from the seminal receptacles to fertilize the eggs that are formed in a pair of ovaries and released via oviducts. In this way, earthworms are hermaphroditic. Septa separate the separate segments, and several parts of the digestive tract are specialized. There's a muscular pharynx, which aids in the ingestion of food. The food passes through the esophagus to the crop and then enters the muscular gizzard. In the gizzard, the food is ground up into smaller pieces before it enters the intestine, where nutrients are absorbed into the blood and carried to all parts of the body. So this is an example of a closed circulatory system. So remember that the blood is always contained in blood vessels in a closed circulatory system. Earthworms also have segmental vessels called hearts, and these are located along the esophagus, and they aid in the pumping of this blood. Earthworms have paired cerebral ganglia that form a brain that lies near to the pharynx, and it's connected to a ventral nerve cord that runs the length of the body. The ganglion and lateral nerves are segmented in each somite. And just like other animals with which you are familiar, waste products are removed after digestion and absorption, and they're removed by nephridia in each segment. Now let's talk about arthropods. They also have a segmented body, but they have exoskeletons, which have jointed appendages. The exoskeleton is made of chitin. They have simple or compound eyes, and they have an open circulatory system. The segmented body is either divided into a cephalothorax and an abdomen, or a head, thorax, and abdomen, 3 parts. Crayfish exhibit cephalothorax and abdomen body parts. They have exoskeleton, which is composed of hardened mineral salts. This shell is shed periodically as the organism grows. So starting at the head, there are two pair of antennae, which are primarily used for sensory reception. Then we'll see there are three pairs of walking legs, and they have pinchers for grabbing. The first pair of these are called coelomates, and they're used for offense and defensive purposes. Then we'll see rather undifferentiated swimmerets on the abdominal segments. This is also where fertilized eggs are attached in females or where sperm is transported in males. Then finally, at the tail, we see uropods and telson, and these are like paddles that are used for swimming. Now let's consider the internal organization. The heart consists of a single chamber. There are arteries that carry blood into the hemicoel, which bathes the body tissues to exchange materials. And then the blood returns via the pericardial sinus to the heart, and this happens passively, and the blood comes back into the heart through tiny valved openings called ostia. Now ventral to the heart lie a pair of elongated gonads, either testes or ovaries depending on the gender, and these ducts lead to the genital openings. Around the gonads are large digestive glands, and these fill up most of the cephalothorax. The digestive system contains a mouth, esophagus, stomach, digestive glands, an intestine, and an anus. The metabolic wastes here are not removed by nephridia, but rather by something called green glands. The nervous system includes a brain-like structure called the supraesophageal ganglia, a ventral nerve cord, and a series of segmental ganglia. There are also lateral nerves in each segment. Some of the segmental ganglia have fused to form larger ganglia in the cephalothorax. Insects are the largest group of arthropods. They're extremely abundant in terrestrial habitats, and many occur in fresh water as well, but none occur in marine habitats. They have a head, thorax, and abdomen. Attached to the thorax are three pairs of legs and two wings. They have simple and compound eyes and undergo complete metamorphosis. They have an open circulatory system. The tympanum is a sound receptor, and the spiracles are openings into the tracheal system, which is a network of tubules that carries air directly to the body tissues. Internally, the gastric ceca are glands that aid in digestion. Metabolic wastes are removed by the Malpighian tubes, and these empty into the intestine. The dorsal blood vessel contains a series of hearts that pump blood anteriorly, where it empties into the hemocoel and then slowly returns to enter the dorsal vessel. So recall that the open circulatory system is one in which the blood bathes the body organs rather than the blood being contained in vessels.